The air hung heavy in their home, not with anger, but with a silence that had become too familiar. Dinner was over, the dishes washed and put away. Anna sat on the couch, a book open in her lap, but her eyes weren't focused on the words. She stole glances at her husband David, who sat across from her, his gaze fixed on the television. He hadn't asked about her day. He hadn't really looked at her. A wave of resentment washed over Anna. This was their routine now, a dance of quiet avoidance. She felt a lump forming in her throat, the unspoken words pressing against her teeth. She longed for the days when they would talk for hours, sharing their dreams and fears. When did they drift so far apart? When did their conversations become clipped, their silences loaded? The weight of their unspoken words felt like a chasm growing between them.
David, we need to talk. It feels like we haven't really talked in weeks.
Anna, not now, okay? I'm tired.
David turned back to the television, the blue light reflecting in his eyes. Anna's hands clenched into fists. Tired? Was he the only one who was tired? Didn't he see how hard she was trying? How she pushed down her own frustrations, her own anxieties, just to keep the peace?
But David, we can't keep doing this. We can't just ignore...
Anna, please, I said not now.
David felt a wave of guilt wash over him as soon as the words left his mouth. He knew Anna was right. They couldn't keep going on like this. But the thought of having one more conversation, one more argument, felt like an insurmountable task. He loved Anna, he truly did. But lately everything felt like a weight on his chest. He felt like a failure. The promotion he had worked so hard for had gone to someone else. His hours had been cut at work, and the fear of losing his job loomed over him like a dark cloud. He was ashamed to admit it, even to himself, but he felt lost. He didn't want to burden Anna with his problems. She had enough on her plate. So he retreated, putting up walls, hoping that she wouldn't notice how much he was struggling. David walked through his days in a daze, the weight of his worries pressing down on him. He knew he should talk to Anna, to share his burden, but the words felt like rocks in his throat. He was afraid of disappointing her, of shattering the image of the strong, capable husband he desperately wanted to be. So he kept silent, burying himself in work and withdrawing further into himself. He convinced himself that he was protecting Anna, shielding her from his problems. He didn't see the pain in her eyes, the way she flinched at his every sharp word. He didn't realize that his silence was a heavier burden to bear than any truth he could speak. He was so caught up in his own struggles that he failed to see how his actions were pushing Anna further and further away. Section 5, a crashing halt. The phone rang, shattering the stillness of the evening. Anna watched as David's face drained of all color, his hand trembling as he reached for the phone. "David, hello?" His voice was a strained whisper. "David, yes, this is he." Anna watched, a knot of dread twisting in her stomach as David listened to the voice on the other end. The words were a blur to her, but the tone, the urgency, sent chills down her spine. She saw her husband's shoulders slump, his hand tightening around the phone. "David, there's been an accident." David choked out, his voice barely audible. The room seemed to spin as Anna's heart stuttered in her chest. "An accident? Who? What was he saying?" She didn't have time to ask before David was rushing out the door, his face etched with a fear she had never seen before. Section 6. Whispers and Regrets. The sterile white walls of the hospital seemed to close in on Anna as she sat in the waiting room. Hours had passed since David's frantic phone call, hours filled with agonizing silence and whispered prayers. The doctor's words echoed in her mind. Doctor, critical condition. Surgery, uncertain. She hadn't even had the chance to ask who had been in the accident. But deep down, a terrifying certainty had settled in her heart. It was David. It had to be. And she hadn't even said goodbye. She thought back to their last exchange, the sharp words, the icy silence. Guilt gnawed at her insides. If something happened to David, how could she live with herself, knowing that their last words had been spoken in anger?
Doctor, how is he? Will he be okay?
He's alive, but he's lost a lot of blood. He has several broken bones and there was a head injury. It's too early to say what the long-term effects might be.
Can I see him?
He's still unconscious, but you can sit with him if you like.
Anna sat by David's bedside, her hand hovering over his, afraid to touch, afraid of what she might feel or not feel. His face was pale, his chest rising and falling with the rhythmic rasp of the respirator. She studied his features, etching them into her memory. The way his forehead crinkled when he concentrated, the way his lips curved into a smile when she told him a joke. Days turned into weeks, and still David remained lost in a world of unconsciousness. Anna barely left his side, reading to him, talking to him, pouring out all the words she had kept bottled up for so long. She told him about her fears, her regrets, her hopes for their future. One day, as she was recounting a funny story about her co-workers, she saw a flicker of movement in David's hand. His fingers twitched, then slowly curled around hers. Anna's breath caught in her throat. It was the faintest of gestures, but it was a sign, a glimmer of hope in the darkness. David's recovery was slow and arduous. There were setbacks, moments of frustration and despair. The head injury had taken its toll, leaving him with gaps in his memory and difficulty concentrating. But through it all, Anna was there, her love and support unwavering. She helped him relearn how to walk, how to talk, how to piece together the fragments of his life. She never complained, never gave up hope, even when he struggled to remember her name, even when his frustration boiled over into anger. As David slowly healed, so too did their relationship. The walls that had stood between them crumbled, replaced by a newfound understanding and a deep appreciation for the preciousness of their bond. The accident had been a wake-up call, a brutal reminder of the fragility of life and the importance of cherishing every moment. It had taken a tragedy to bring them back together, but in the process, they had discovered a love stronger than resentment, more powerful than fear. Sitting beside David on the porch swing, watching the sunset paint the sky in hues of orange and purple, Anna felt a profound sense of gratitude. They still had challenges ahead, but they would face them together, their hands intertwined, their hearts open to each other. The silence between them now was no longer a chasm of unspoken words, but a comfortable quietude born of understanding and shared love. They had learned the hard way that communication was the lifeblood of a marriage, and they were determined to never let the weight of their silences threaten their happiness again.